Imagine scrolling through your feed right now. Thousands of photos, hundreds of stories. Someone's vacation, someone's dinner, someone's morning coffee with a caption about gratitude. Now imagine a blank page. No posts, no stories, no profile picture updates, just silence. While billions of people are living their digital lives every day, why do some still choose to stay out of the game? You might think they're shy, or strange, or maybe they just don't know how to use the apps. But that's not it. Not even close. The people who go quiet online are not broken. They're not hiding from the world. Many of them are deeply thoughtful. They have rich inner lives. They laugh, they love, they feel things deeply. They just don't post about it. The desire for control and personal boundaries. Let's start with something simple. Imagine someone asks you a personal question at a party. A stranger, someone you just met. They ask where you live, how much you earn, what your relationship status is. Most of us would feel something tighten inside, a small resistance. A quiet, that's none of your business. Now imagine thousands of strangers having access to all of that, every day, without even asking. For some people, that image is terrifying, not because they're paranoid, because they value something very deeply, their own private space. People who don't share on social media often think about their personal information differently. They don't see it as content, they see it as territory, something that belongs to them, something worth protecting. Think about Sarah. She's a graphic designer in her 30s. She has no Instagram, no Facebook, nothing. Her friends tease her about it sometimes, but she has a very clear reason. She says, "My life is mine. I don't want an algorithm to know what I eat for breakfast and use it to sell me something by noon." And she's not wrong to think that way. We know now that apps collect data constantly. Where you go, what you look at, how long you stare at a particular photo. All of that becomes information that companies use and sell. Most people know this, but scroll anyway. Some people know this and stop completely. There's also a deeper fear underneath all of this. The fear of losing control of your own story. When you post something online, you give it away. Anyone can screenshot it, share it, take it out of context, respond to it in ways you never expected. The thing you meant as a joke becomes something else entirely in someone else's hands. The photo you posted in a good mood can be there forever, even when the mood is long gone. People who stay offline understand something that the rest of us sometimes forget. Once you share something, it's no longer fully yours. And for some people, that loss of ownership is simply not worth it. They want to be the only narrator of their own lives. Not because they're secretive, but because the story is theirs, and they want to keep it that way. There's a kind of quiet power in that decision. A line drawn not out of fear, but out of self-respect, introversion, and high sensitivity. Now let's talk about something a little more personal. Have you ever been around a group of people, laughing, talking, having what everyone would call a good time and still felt somehow alone? Or have you ever come home after a social event and felt completely drained? Like you needed hours of silence just to feel like yourself again? If that sounds familiar, you might understand why some people keep their inner world very carefully guarded. Introverts don't dislike people. That's a common misunderstanding. They just experience the world with a different kind of sensitivity. They process things deeply. They notice things others miss. And they tend to find large amounts of social interaction tiring rather than energizing. Social media, at its core, is constant social interaction. It never stops. It never quiets down. For someone who is already sensitive to the weight of other people's reactions, that environment can feel genuinely overwhelming. Think about someone like Daniel. He's kind, funny, thoughtful. His close friends love him. But he stopped using social media years ago and never looked back. When you ask him why, he says something interesting. He says, "I started checking how many likes I got before I even finished breakfast. And if the number was low, my whole mood shifted. I didn't like who I was becoming." That's not weakness, that's awareness. For highly sensitive people, things like likes and comments aren't just small numbers. They carry emotional weight. A negative comment doesn't just sting for a moment. It replays. It gets analyzed. It sits in the chest for days. And even silence can hurt. Posting something you care about and receiving nothing in return. No reaction, no acknowledgement, just the hollow sound of no one noticing. That kind of experience changes people, quietly. Over time, sensitive people learn to protect their emotional energy. They become very careful about what they expose to the world, because exposure often means vulnerability, and vulnerability in a public space often means getting hurt. There's also something else. People who carry this kind of sensitivity often have a deep longing to be seen as they truly are, not as a carefully edited version, not as a highlight reel, as themselves, fully and honestly. And they quickly realize that social media doesn't really offer that. What it offers is performance. And for someone who craves genuine connection, performance feels hollow. It feels like the opposite of what they're looking for. So they step away, not because they don't want to be known, but because they want to be known in a real way, a way that a post can never provide. Pressure from the perfection race. Here is something worth sitting with for a moment. When was the last time you saw someone post a photo of themselves crying, or sharing a meal that went wrong, or writing about a day that was genuinely, completely bad? It almost never happens. And we all know why. Social media has become a place where everyone only shows their best. The vacation, not the exhaustion before it. The clean living room, not the mess in the corner they moved out of frame. The smile, not the argument that happened an hour before the photo was taken. Over time, this creates something dangerous. It creates the illusion that everyone else's life is better than yours. More exciting, more beautiful, more successful. Most of us feel this even when we know it isn't true. We scroll, we compare, and somewhere in the back of our minds, a quiet voice whispers, "Why don't I have that?" Some people decide they can't keep up with that race. And more importantly, they decide they don't want to. Think about someone like Emma. She's a photographer, actually, talented, creative, genuinely passionate about her work. But she doesn't post online, not a single photo. When people ask her about it, she says, "I realized I was starting to take photos for the feed instead of for myself. The camera stopped being a tool for seeing and became a tool for showing. And I hated that feeling." That shift, she describes, is something a lot of people feel but never put into words. There's also a particular kind of perfectionism that drives some people offline. The kind that says, "If I can't do this perfectly, I won't do it at all." They look at their photo and see something slightly off. The lighting isn't right. The caption isn't clever enough. The image doesn't match the version of themselves they want to project. So they don't post it. And after enough times of that, they stop trying altogether. This isn't failure. It's a response to an environment that has set impossibly high standards for ordinary moments. Opting out becomes a way of saying, "My life doesn't have to be a performance. My Monday can just be a Monday. My dinner can just be dinner. My face on a regular day is enough." That's a quiet act of resistance, and it takes more courage than most people realize. Past wounds. A psychological shield. Sometimes the reason someone goes quiet online isn't a philosophy. It's a scar. We don't always talk about what the internet can do to a person. The comment section that picked apart someone's appearance when they were 17 and still trying to figure out who they were. The photo that got shared without permission. The private moment that became public mockery. These things leave marks. Think about someone like Marcus. In high school, he posted a video of himself playing guitar. He was proud of it. He thought it was good. Then the comments came. Most of them were cruel. Some of them were very specific. He deleted the video, but the words stayed. Years later, he still hesitates before sharing anything about himself with anyone. That hesitation is not irrational. It's a learned response. The mind remembers what hurt before, and it builds walls so that it doesn't get hurt the same way again. There's also something that researchers have started calling posting depression. It's not a clinical term, but the experience is real. You post something, you wait, you refresh, you check the numbers, and if the response is small, or if no one seems to care, there's a specific kind of emptiness that follows. Worse than not posting at all, because you opened yourself up, and the world responded with indifference. After a few of those experiences, some people make a very simple calculation. The possible pain is greater than the possible reward. So why play? They don't announce the decision. They just quietly disappear from the feed. And over time, the distance begins to feel less like withdrawal and more like relief. There's something important to understand here. These people didn't give up on connection. They gave up on a specific way of connecting that kept hurting them. That's not the same thing. Choosing silence after being burned is not hiding. It's healing. And healing sometimes means protecting yourself from the very thing that wounded you in the first place. A life philosophy focused on the present. Now here is where things get a little deeper. Some people aren't offline because they're afraid, or wounded, or avoiding comparison. They're offline because of something they believe about moments themselves. Have you ever been somewhere beautiful, a meal, a sunset, a conversation, and felt the urge to take a photo? And then, once you took it, felt like something changed, like the moment shifted slightly from something you were experiencing to something you were documenting. That feeling points to something real. When we pull out a phone to capture a moment, we step slightly outside of it. We become observers of our own experience. And the moment, instead of living fully inside us, starts living in a file on a server somewhere. Some people feel this loss so strongly that they made a quiet decision a long time ago. They choose the experience over the record of it. Think about someone like Rachel. She travels a few times a year. She goes to places that would make a perfect Instagram feed. Mountains, markets, old cities with beautiful light. And she takes it all in, with her eyes, with her whole body. She eats without photographing the food. She watches sunsets without holding up a screen. When friends ask why she doesn't share any of it, she says something that sounds simple but carries real weight. A moment is truly mine only when I don't share it. There's a whole way of living inside that sentence. These people often practice what some call digital minimalism, not because they hate technology, but because they've made a deliberate choice about what deserves their attention. They read instead of scrolling. They call a friend instead of liking a post. They sit quietly with their own thoughts instead of filling every silence with content. They've noticed something that gets lost in the noise of constant connection. That real life, the kind that actually fills you up, mostly happens in the spaces between notifications, the walk home when you're not listening to anything, the meal where no one checks their phone, the conversation that goes somewhere unexpected because neither person was distracted. These people have decided that their attention is one of the most valuable things they have, and they're very careful about where they spend it. It's worth asking a simple question. Are these people actually better off? The research, as much as we have of it, tends to say yes, at least in certain ways. People who step back from social media consistently report lower levels of anxiety. When you stop comparing your life to a curated version of someone else's, the comparison stops hurting you. You can only feel the sting of FOMO if you're watching what you're supposedly missing. Step away, and the fear quietly fades. There's also something that happens to relationships when you stop performing them online. The friend you used to communicate with mainly through likes and reactions starts to feel more distant, but somehow also more real when you call them. The conversation goes deeper. There's more to say, because there's less that has already been broadcast. People who don't post often invest that energy directly into the people in front of them. The relationship becomes a private thing again, something shared between two people, not something documented for an audience. And there's a kind of freedom that grows in the absence of judgment. When you're not posting, no one is evaluating you. You don't need to perform a version of yourself that is acceptable, likable, or impressive. You can just be, without commentary, without the pressure of other people's opinions shaping how you see your own life. Over time, something interesting happens. People who live this way tend to develop a very clear sense of who they actually are, not who they want to appear to be, not who the algorithm rewards, but who they are when no one is watching. That kind of self-knowledge is rare, and it turns out that silence is one of the places where it grows. By now, you might have a very different picture of these people than you started with. But let's address a few things directly, because the misunderstandings are real and they're worth clearing up. The first one is easy. People say, oh, they're antisocial. They're weird. They don't like people. But think about everyone we've described today. Sarah, who has deep principles about her own privacy. Daniel, who was protecting his emotional health. Emma, who was trying to protect her creativity. Marcus, who was carrying real wounds. Rachel, who was choosing presence over performance. Does any of that sound antisocial to you? These people have friends. They have conversations. Many of them are, in person, some of the most engaging and thoughtful people you'll ever meet. They're just selective about where and how they connect. And that selectivity is not a flaw, it's a value. The second misunderstanding is that they have nothing interesting to share, as if the only people with rich inner lives are the ones posting about them constantly. The reality is almost the opposite. Many people who stay offline have inner worlds so full and complex that they wouldn't even know how to compress them into a caption. They're not quiet because there's nothing there. They're quiet because what's there doesn't fit in a box. The third misunderstanding is that they're hiding from society, that they've opted out of contributing, that their silence is a kind of selfishness or avoidance. But stepping off a particular platform doesn't mean stepping out of life. These people volunteer, mentor, create, teach, love, argue, contribute. They just do it in rooms rather than on screens, in person rather than in comment sections, with their actual time rather than their online presence. Their quiet is not absence. It's just a different kind of presence. So here is what we found today. The person you know who doesn't post anything isn't broken. They're not antisocial. They're not hiding, and they're not behind the times. They've made a choice, a deeply personal, often deeply considered choice. Some of them are protecting something precious, their sense of self, their private space, the feeling that their life belongs entirely to them. Some of them are healing from things we can't see, carrying wounds from a version of the internet that was less than kind, and choosing silence not as defeat, but as recovery. Some of them have found something in presence that they couldn't find in performance. The fullness of a moment experienced completely, without a camera, without an audience, without the wait for validation that comes after silence. Online doesn't mean meaninglessness in real life. In fact, for many people, the silence is exactly what makes the real life more meaningful. We live in a world that has decided that sharing is connection, that visibility is value, that a life well lived is a life well documented. But some people are quietly questioning all of that, and they might be onto something. So here is a small thought to leave you with today. What would happen if you put your phone away for just one day? Not to prove something, not as a challenge, just to listen, to yourself, to the people around you, to the parts of your life that never make it into a post. You might find something there, something quiet, something that belongs entirely to you. Drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts. Have you ever considered stepping back from social media? What stopped you? Or if you already have, what did you find on the other side?